Welcome to my site, everybody. My name is Paul Smyers, and I've been a researcher and dot connector for many, many years. And in the last 15 years or so, I started an internet site here on YouTube where I discuss a lot of ancient mysteries and esoteric psychology, esoteric sciences, and so on. And today I'm going to talk some more about some very, very incredible sources of information, books that, if you give me a little time here, I'll present a whole bunch of really fantastic books and have some commentary about it. Just a little preface here. A lot of people don't realize that somewhere around the late 1800s into the 1900s, the British Empire and other empires had gone around the world. They started exploring and they found all these cultures like India and Thailand and Asia and Malaysia and Angkor Wat and all the Hindu temples in India and so on. And they began to bring some of the traditions and teachings back to the West at that time. And as I mentioned in one of my other videos, there was a planned process that's discussed in many of the books I'm going to recommend here that took a far-sighted view of the future and unfolding of humanity, and the whole intention of this beautiful human body and this life on this planet is to have almost like a heaven on earth where we have the full functioning experience of being a human being with all our senses activated and all our consciousness activated. And it's a fantastic process, and there are techniques and teachings that specifically address how that process works, the psychological and physical aspects of it. And it's very, very complicated, but the teachings are so precious and so amazing that literally countless sages, teachers of all kinds, have practiced techniques and learned from these teachings and brought tremendous understanding of all the different arts, sciences, architecture, philosophy, wisdom of all the ages, because embedded in these teachings are profound, profound understandings of what it means to be a human being in this existence. And I want to recommend these books, but I want to give a little bit of a preface because I'm going to focus on two particular authors here, which are quite well known to many researchers. Helena Blavatsky was a woman from, I believe, in Russia, and she happened to have a very, very expert classical understanding. In those days, they didn't have TV, so when people read and read and read, I mean, they would just have time to digest and think and talk with people and have conversations, and maybe some of them even traveled. Many people went to India, and they spoke with people, and they talked to these yogis, and some of them opened up and started sharing some of these great truths. And it's very, very complicated because the history of our planet and the evolution of human beings on this planet, I call it evolution in not the traditional sense of Darwin, but I talk about the unfoldment of consciousness, because that's the important thing. The most important thing is the unfoldment of our awareness, because the esoteric teachings say that basically this divine beingness, this infinite beingness we call God, is beyond the what's the one about when we can't speak of anything. Nothing can be said about it because it's infinite. It is the oneness, the only thing, the Almighty, the witness. And we in our tiny little egos and our tiny little self-identity think, oh, we're so powerful in our own imagination, but in fact we're just like this body that we have is just like a firefly in the night, and it might be last one night and it's gone. And this life that we have may be even 100 years. What can we understand in 100 years compared to the universe? So these ancient teachings are a treasure. Now, Blavatsky, just to preface here, there were secret societies of different kinds. There are good people that have secrets, and there's bad people who have secrets. You see, there are good people who keep secrets. Mainly, they're not really trying to keep them. They just are interested in subjects that most people are not interested in. So they are, in that sense, they're secret, but they're not forbidden. They're available. A lot of people just don't have an interest in them because, as I show you here shortly, these books are fantastic. They're incredibly long and detailed and very specific, and there's techniques involved in some of them and practice and how you can actually activate your DNA and activate your pineal gland and all these parts of our physiology. So Blavatsky just a human being, had her own issues or whatever. I don't know a lot about the detailed aspects of her personal history, but these kinds of organizations can be infiltrated, or odd people join, and not everybody's on the same level of understanding, and there's all kinds of repetition of different concepts and philosophies about everything, and everybody wants to comment on it. But you have to follow the thread back and go inside with yourself and read these books yourself and listen to the sages and people speak, because what it does is awaken your own experience so that you have your own knowledge and that you don't have to depend on a book or even someone else talking to you. But the whole purpose of it is to give some preface to the majesty of the cosmic creation that we are a part of, and we're unfolding through that. And it's all about the evolution of our consciousness. And the bodies on the earth in which the souls inhabit have changed dramatically. We know from research there's bones of all different kinds, big ones, there's giants, there were giants, yep. And there have been a lot of other kinds of strange beings on this planet, and still are on this planet. So the process of our unfoldment of consciousness, which is I call the involution, and the evolution is another phrase. The involution is going from spirit into matter, and it's just like long eon process where everything just like involving itself in matter, and then the evolution is out of the matter in back into the spirit. So in one sense, that the cosmos is this cosmic breath of endless, constant change and unfoldment and eternity. And each thing gets better and better. It's like if you polish a mirror or something, and you just keep making it better and better. This universe seems to be just like refining and refining and building more beauty and more beauty and more beauty. And that beauty unfolds from within. And as we know from history, we see all these artists and fantastic musicians and architects and so on, that the fantastic awareness has come out and expressed itself in awesome beauty constructions that we know from history. So without me further going on about that author, I want to introduce a little bit another one, Alice Bailey. Now, there's a organization that was formed later called Lucis Trust, and apparently that goes off. There's light and there's light, okay? There's the fake and there's the real, okay? That's always been true. So there's the real good things and the real divine hierarchy and the real divine expression, and then there's the imitation that lesser beings do. And this is the point of constantly refreshing our knowledge and refreshing our understanding so that we get back to the simple truths, the noble aspects of it, and don't misuse this understanding like it has been. Because essentially these ancient teachings are just about science. It's a science of the soul. That's what it is. Very detailed. So Alice Bailey was in touch with some interesting, called Mahatmas, and I've met some people like that, very, very profound. Their whole life was meditation. Their whole life was just immersing themselves. They didn't have any distractions and obligations. They made that personal commitment, and then they transformed their body into a radiating, blissful. And there are some of these gurus, they can lie down on a book and they can memorize it the next day. So there are extraordinary powers that are available to human beings if you want to go through that whole discipline, and sometimes it may take lifetimes. But these aspects of this human life are available to all and not restricted to the Mahatmas and the gurus and so on. The whole point is you have a human body, do something with it because it's a magical thing. And again, I'll introduce some of the books here shortly. I'll talk a little bit about Blavatsky first because I'll have less books of hers to recommend, but I'll just try to cover them briefly. And please listen for a while because I think you'll get a lot about this as the commentary comes out. Helena Blavatsky wrote The Secret Doctrine. Now, there's 2 volumes of this. And this is my second or third copies of this, and boy, I tell you what, it'd take a lifetime to digest this, honestly. I mean, I page through it sometimes, I look through the index, I look up different subjects, you talk about the various translations of very, very ancient books. There were some that were called the Books of Dzyan, D-Z-Y-A-N, or something like that. There are ancient teachings were oral because there was an intonation of the voice, like in Sanskrit and some of these ancient languages, where the intonation of the voice was part of it wasn't just the symbols and the words, the physical structure of the language. there was something in the intonation, in the telling of it, that would awaken an understanding of what you're talking about. This is where language gets to be like really, really profound, where the tonality of our voice conveys precisely the meaning of what you're trying to say. Because believe me, as you know, in texting and so on, you can have a lot of misunderstandings, but when the voice is involved, there's a lot more understanding and clarity, because we hear that intuitively, take it in subconsciously, and there's a throat center we have, and when that's activated and purified, there's a sweetness that comes, and a pleasantness of voice, and a certain channeling in of clarity that comes through. So that's why these ancient teachings talk about aligning our energy fields and our being into the cosmic breath, so that we are consciously integrated into the oneness. So the secret doctrine goes into a lot of the evolution, or the change, the transformation, evolution, not in the Darwinian sense, the involution, evolution, where at one time, millions of years ago, things happen on this planet, and there's this way beyond what we can know from our history. But this planet has been habitable and occupied in different ways and visited in different ways for a very, 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 very long time. But it's the ancient teachings that have come down to us that convey this message to us, that look, we're not alone here, and there are beings involved and participating. The whole planet is one being, and you might say the universe is one being. So there's a cascading hierarchy, you might say, of consciousnesses and activities that produce all the bodies and guard all the bodies and maintain all the bodies, and it's just a never-ending, constant process. So it's very, very complicated, naturally. So you got fat books like this in great detail about the history and the different mystical groups that have been on the planet and all that. So she wrote some amazing books, and I recommend them. Now, she also wrote these two books, Isis Unveiled, Volume 1 and 2. Now, again, I have read most of these a long time ago. I have some newer copies here that I haven't, highlighted, but I browse through them sometimes and pick up flip things out of them, because again, the history, what's happened in Egypt, what happened in India, what happened in Lemuria and Atlantis, and all these kinds of different activities that have happened on this planet. The ultimate goal of all of it is to manifest divinity, basically. That's the whole purpose of the creation. Just manifest more and more beauty, more and more refinement, more and more incredible awarenesses and consciousnesses, and that's what it does. That's what the universe does. And we're a little on the ride here. Now, this is a summation, or kind of like an abridgment of the secret doctrine. So if you want to get something a little smaller and more manageable, you can see it's all highlighted. I read every page of it a long time ago. Now, Alice Bailey, one more book quickly, The Key to Theosophy by Blavatsky, another interesting book. And this, again, has a whole lot of conversations and interviews and dialogues and so on. So that's one. Now, Alice Bailey, again, that was a really, really profound series of books. And I'll show them really quickly to here, because there's probably at least 20 or 30 of them. But one in particular here, I'll just show you. The Soul and Its Mechanism. Scientific, it's a science to unfold our consciousness. That's the ultimate science. And the great gurus and teachers have given techniques of all different kinds for healing, for understanding, for awakening different parts of the body, even for martial arts, and using the body in that way, and exercise and healing and so on. So knowing this body, the soul, and the mechanism is our body. We're inside this body, and we're doing the different things, like hand inside of a glove. We're inside here doing all these things with our body, and knowing how that body works, and knowing some of the energies, the types of energy circulations that happen. There's a very, very complex teaching, which many people know about the chakras, the nadis, the various junction points of energy fields. we live in a matrix. Everything is a matrix in a sense of a structure, an underlying structure, and the ultimate underlying structure is a type of sacred geometry, and it's in motion and spin and so on. So all of these things nestle together, and there is a mechanism to spiritual unfoldment that has been taught, and it's very complex, but the simplest part is just understanding the immediate source of our breathing, and unfolding with that leads to a whole bunch of other things. Now, a few more books here. The Destiny of Nations, that was a fascinating book. These Mahatmas made some commentary about the various situations in different cities and so on. The countries of the world each have their energy. The cities, the great cities, some of them, as you know, have been inhabited for thousands and thousands of years because they're on a point on the earth where there was energy field, and they were deliberately founded there. And this is an ancient tradition also, where they know where certain energy is moving along on the earth. For example, like you take advantage of rivers and mountains and so on. They all have a physiological effect, a physical effect on the planet in the way that the energy flows. So they built these temples and these structures on these locations for a reason, and now we have all our different lines on the map, let's say this country and that country, but basically it goes back a very, very long time that, you know, those cities, New York, France, you know, Paris, Rome, all those big cities around the world, Bangkok, they all have some function on this planet in terms of the organization of the planet is expressing itself through various energy and various manifestations like rivers and mountains and winds and so on, that there are places on the planet that have powerful, powerful concentrations and releases of energy, like for example in Hawaii, the volcanoes. The Earth has to release some of this powerful, powerful energy, and fortunately Hawaii is way out in the middle of the ocean, because when that sucker blasts off, at least it's not near too many other people, which it has done in the past, and whole islands get built by that beautiful area out in Hawaii. Now, the consciousness of the atom, again, that's a really amazing thing. A little bit of commentary about the consciousness, the field of consciousness is the ultimate reality. It's just the oneness of everything, and it is the invisible, mystical, call it God, whatever, but the consciousness is present right into the quantum fields, into the very finest levels of creation. There's that ultimate, they call it Akasha or Shakti, there's divine energy, I'll get into that in some of my videos about esoteric science and psychology, but there are the three aspects of creator, operator, destroyer. There's generation, operation, and sustaining, and in the wave we have an initial pulse, and then you have a sustained pulse, and then you have a collapse pulse, attack, sustain, and decay. That's all part of cycles, and the consciousness of the atom is helping us go toward learning about where the atoms in our being are conscious too. There's a universe within ourselves that we can explore, and that is shown by these great gurus and so on. The Problems of Humanity, another short book about different aspects of human experience and what happens in society and so on. The Rays and the Initiations. Their teaching here in this series of books was about the 7 rays and the various the 7 spirits before the throne, the 7 great gurus, the 7 stars, the great bear. There's all this symbolism about the 7. The energy flows in and out of creation. You know, cosmic, our solar system is transiting through around the galaxy, and every so often various rays come in, various beams. This is like, and that each ray, the 7 cosmic rays split into sub, and there's planes and spectrums of frequency that have to do with the various minerals, and spectrums that have to do with the life force and the prana. There's spectrums of radiation and energy that have to do with material manifestation and all that, and the different elements. So it's very, very fascinating. Esoteric astrology. This one's a battered up old book. I've been really into astrology. The ancient teachings were based on the cycles of the solar system. The solar system is alive. The whole universe is alive. So it's evolving in its own cosmic level. And you might say the sun looks out into the cosmos the way we look out with our eyes. The sun has its own perception and interchange. It's not like our eyes. It's just there's an interchange of energy and flow in and out from that area which the sun is, where we have every once in a while it blasts off, and it also takes in energy because the solar system is alive. It's also personified in many of the ancient teachings as being, a god, you might say. They refer to the heavenly man, you might say, because as above, so below, that we have these chakras within us, and part of one aspect of our heart chakra has to do with the sun. You see, and our throat chakra has to do with another aspect of the solar system. So all these energies funnel down and become part of the manifestation of our own existence. And these great sages talked a lot about that, and they try to record the information. So one real short book here, The Reappearance of the Christ. I read this a little bit long time ago. Basically, the Christ is an appointed. In esoteric teaching, the Christ is a world teacher's position that is basically a position. And over the ages, thousands and thousands of years, even that being we call the Christ wants to go on and do some cosmic service. And boy, as teachers teach, their teachers take on some of their work. See, that's how this whole cosmic work happens. See, we're learning, we have the chance to be initiated or learn certain things, and then we transmit that information to whoever listens to. That's part of the beautiful process. And then as we learn more ourselves and get more expert, then maybe we'll teach another subject. Or maybe we're still learning. So we're both learning and teaching at the same time. And these great teachers, sages, they may go off in some cosmic thing. Maybe their being becomes a star or something, and maybe there's a saying about the Buddha. He says, I'm not leaving the solar system until every being is liberated, and that would be like a long time. So the energy of these great beings that they tap into is left for us in teachings, and we can practice meditation and experience that, but we can also read some of the transmissions that have come down to us in verbal form or in written form and help us get some kind of an understanding of this incredible existence. So a few more books here. We have the rays and initiations. So again, the 7 rays. There's the different stages of unfoldment, and that all beings go through. Even a planet, a solar system goes through initiation. At some point, the solar system, the sun will want to move into a different form, and they'll go into a expansion form or explode or transmute, and even galaxies do that. And so the cosmos is full of activity of things being created and things being sustained and then things destroyed. It's called the Vishnu was the sustainer, and Shiva was the destroyer, and Brahma was the creator. So it's God means generation, operator, and destroyer. There's the functions that go on in the cosmos. It's not like a god that sits up there with the magic wand and say, I think I'll do this today, and pop, 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 pop. It's sort of like a real scientific process how God works. So I'll cover a few more books here. There are some other people that came in. A lot of people know him, Yogananda. Yogananda was an interesting guru. I believe he was in the early of the 1960s, and he brought some really, really interesting observation. One of his themes was the loving God. Loving God in the terms of a romance. See, we often don't think about that. Some people talk about fearing God and all that, but there's a certain friendship that the ancients taught. You are my mother, you're my father, you're my brother, you're my friend. You are riches, you are wisdom, you are my all, my Lord. So this man, Mr. Yogananda, was a very fascinating man, and I read his book long ago, The Autobiography of Yogi, and it inspired me a lot because he had his journey of how he came to understand these things, and he practiced a particular discipline that most of us can't do. He was very celibate, and he was a yogi, and he ate certain foods and all that. And that if you want to discipline yourself that way, then you can be like him, but not everybody wants to go that route. Real quickly here about the human aura. Elizabeth Clare Prophet. Now, I take teaching wherever I consider, whatever I consider teaching, anything I can learn from anybody. But I don't care about the personality of the teacher so much as I care about whether the information that they tell me helps me and it has some relevance in my life. And if I learn from a book and find out, hey, they're just a normal person. Of course they're normal people. The human being is divine. That's what we fail to understand. Human beings are supposed to be divine. We are divine. We're supposed to manifest the divinity, and by divinity I mean the awesome creativity, the awesome joy, the awesome wisdom that is coming from deep within us, because that's where God really is. It inhabits all of our cells, and all of our being and all of our breathing is inhabited by, and that presence that we can feel through a process of meditation and initiation. So I think I've covered some of these books pretty well here. I don't want to make these videos too long because then maybe they get a little bit too boring and so on, but there's a lot of really precious information in these books that I still go back to them after many, many years. I got some of my books back in the 70s. That's like 45, 50 years ago. And I still look at them sometimes, and I refer, and I go back. And there's another group of books by this same author, which I've made actually some videos of. The Treatise on Cosmic Fire. Oh my God, that's a really fat book, about 1,200 pages, and I have a couple of copies of that. I'm still trying to understand some of that stuff. But how we understand something complex like that is to first go to the simplicity, because as above so below, that this body that we have and the technology of this body is a microcosm of the cosmos. This is why the great sages say this human body that you have, whatever it is, you look at it in the mirror, I don't care what color it is or shape or anything, but if you're breathing, there's a aspect of your body and your physiology that you can have a link to the divine, and that's called the initiation. That's called born again. All these words people used in religions and so on, sometimes they just really get in the way. It's just awakening. It's just, end up in the morning, you transit from sleep into awakeness. It's not a big process. It's just like it's so easy and it's very pleasant. So we have another level of waking up that has to do with understanding our deep psyche, our deep inner breath, that consciousness of the atom. My teacher, Prem Wawad, says that what moves the atom moves you. The energy that moves the atom moves you. So I hope by conveying this information that I inspire some people to look and search. We need an abridgment of the different religions. We need a common understanding of all the different religious people. We all have the same body. See, we don't have to have so many varieties of fixations and concepts, because essentially we're all one. We're all the same. In any kind of religion you want, even if you're an atheist, you may deny God exists, but you can't deny your own breath. You can't deny that the atom is there. You can't, whether you believe it or not, it's up to you, but there is a reality here that you can experience, and these books are really intended to trigger and awaken that inner understanding. I find them very, very inspiring, because we don't get those kind of books, those really inspiring books in the regular marketplace. We don't get them taught to us when we're young. So we need to go out on our own and